Shalom. Okay, we are on. Now it's time to start getting to work. Okay, what do I mean by that? Now we've got to start thinking of some svaras. And I want to direct you with some svaras by working with you through the questions to think about, generally on every single sugya that we do. So I give you a bunch of sources, list off a bunch of questions, usually about 4 of them, and tell you to get to work and start thinking about them. Well, that's what I'd like you to start doing today. We'll extend that till tomorrow a little bit. We'll probably go over this a little tomorrow. What I'd like you to do is start thinking through these various sources. Okay, so 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 on the questions. What we're going to start doing is we're going to go through the questions. We're going to do a lot of review on the sources that we saw yesterday in order to best answer these questions. And yeah, so let's go through them. Okay. Now, the first of the questions to think about, they can be found on the second page of your sugya sheets, is how many dinim does the Rambam mention in the first 2 halachos? Right, that's going to be our going to be our question. Right, how many dinim does the Rambam mention in the first 2 halachos? What do I mean by that? Okay, let's take it slow here. Okay, we have mitzvos which are listed in the Torah. Right, we have mitzvos that are listed in the Torah, and those mitzvos are there's 613 of them. Then we have mitzvah da'oraisas. Then we have laws that are part of the that are Torah laws that are usually details within the 613 mitzvahs. Then we have mitzvah d'rabanans. We have laws that the rabbis came and placed onto the mitzvahs. Right. So either to protect the mitzvahs or to enhance the mitzvahs, whatever was done. Right. That's the idea. Okay. Now, there are also within each mitzvah d'oraisa, or within the 613 mitzvahs, there are dinim, there are laws, okay? And a lot of times we find that in one mitzvah that we're looking at, there are actually 2 different dinim going on, right? We look at the mitzvah and we say, okay, this is, you have to eat matzah. And in reality, there might be 2 different laws operating in matzah. And because there are 2 laws operating in matzah, we sometimes mistakenly think that things are a bit confused and things don't really make that much sense. But in reality, we're confused by the fact that there are 2 dinim operating there. What I want to do with you now is I want to see how many dinim does the Rambam mention in the first 2 halachos. Remember, what's the mitzvah that we're examining? The mitzvah that we're examining is the mitzvah of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, right? The mitzvah of telling the story from Mitzrayim. That's the mitzvah that we're involved in, right? That's what we're studying. One of the 613 mitzvahs is to tell the story. The question is, what exactly is that mitzvah of telling the story? So let's look and you'll as we're going through, you should be thinking in your head, how many mitzvahs how many different dinim, how many different laws essentially am I seeing here? The Rambam had started off, if you remember, and he says, mitzvahs aseh shel Torah lo saper b'nisim v'niflos shenasu lavosenu b'lo chamishasar. Right? So the Rambam had said there's a mitzvah to tell over the miracles and the wonders that happened to our forefathers in Egypt on the 15th of Nisan. And he quoted a pasuk to prove that. Zachar seyom hazeh asher yitzasem mitzrayim. Right? We see that pasuk in source number 3. So the Rambam had said there's a mitzvah to tell the nisim, the miracles and the wonders. Right, that seems like that's the mitzvah, right? We do that at the Seder. We tell over the miracles and the wonders that happened, right? And then the Rambam says that that we know. How do we know when it's the 15th? Right, the Rambam compared it to Kiddush, right? And then he says that v'afal pi she'ein lo ben, even if he doesn't have a child. Right, so because it says v'garat lebincha, that you're supposed to tell this to your children. Right, that's the idea, is you tell this to your children. So even still, chacham have to tell the story, and they have to go ahead and whoever does it the longest, that person's meshubach. Then the Rambam had gone along and he had said that there's a mitzvah lo deal lebanim v'afilu lo shalu shneimar v'garat lebincha. Then the Rambam quoting the pasuk of v'garat lebincha, which he had already quoted in source number 1, if you remember, right? In halacha number 1, he had said in his explanation of how you know that this mitzvah takes place on the 15th, right? How do we know that we have to do this on the 15th of Nisan? So the Rambam had said that because the pasuk said v'garat lebincha b'yomahu, so the Rambam had already talked about this pasuk, but then he says mitzvah lo'odiel lebanim. This is source number 2, right? In halacha beis, he had said that there's a mitzvah to tell our children, to inform our children, right? And he says, even if they don't ask. Shnei Marni quotes this pasuk again. Vigada to Labincha, quoting right what we have listed as source number 4. It's the second pasuk, right? We had said that it depends on the intelligence level of the child. Okay, so my question is, when you had gone through those halachos now, right? And how many dinim did you see there? That's my question. There's one mitzvah. The mitzvah is to tell over the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim. When the Rambam counts the 613 mitzvos, he's going to count these 2 mitzvos as one. But how many dinim did we see? Okay, that's the first question we have. Now, the second question we have is something that fascinates me. It absolutely fascinates me. And the reason why it fascinates me is the following principle that I'd like to inform you of. When we have the 613 mitzvos, each of the 613 mitzvos stand alone, right? We don't. What do I mean by that? That they stand alone? We don't have a mitzvah that is a mitzvah because it's dependent on another mitzvah. All 613, it might be dependent on the situation. For instance, I have an obligation today of giving korbanot, of giving an offering. I have sinned. I sinned on purpose. I sinned accidentally. I sinned with knowledge. I sinned without knowledge. I am obligated to give a korban. Now, why am I not giving a korban today? Because there's no Beit HaMikdash, there's no place, there's no Mizbeach. If I tried, and people do this, if I try bringing a lamb up to the Beit HaMikdash, I would be stopped by the Israeli soldiers. It would start a massive riot. So I'm not giving that korban. Now, am I not giving that korban? Why am I not giving that korban? There's no Mizbeach. It's right. So is the mitzvah of korbanot talui dependent on the Mizbeach, on the altar? Not really. Right? That's not really the idea here, right? What's the right? That's not, in essence, that's not really the idea. What's the idea here? What's going on, right? So what's interesting, okay? And this really fascinates here. Where do we see that there's something that might be, I might think it's dependent? Here, the Rambam, when he discusses in source number 1, where he says that we have a mitzvah to be mitzvah asay shel Torah l'saper b'nisiv v'niflos shenasu lavosenu Rabbi Mitzrayim belach hamishasar b'nisan. He quotes a pasuk, so that should be enough for us. It's not dependent, right? Situations might change, but there's no dependency here, right? So the Rambam says there's a mitzvah to tell the story of Mitzrayim. Good, that's it. Right, I have a mitzvah to tell the story from Mitzrayim. There might be a couple dinim involved, right? That was what we just had seen and what I just had asked you. But there's a mitzvah to tell the story of Mitzrayim, and that's the mitzvah, right? The mitzvah to tell the story of the Exodus from Egypt, from the Exodus from Mitzrayim. Okay, good, I got that, I understand that. But the Rambam does something strange now, right? What does he do? He makes a comparison. He says, and I'd like you to look at this. Right? Look at the end of the first line of source number 1. He says, Shnei Amar, Zachar Siyom Hazeh Asher Yisasem Mitzrayim. Okay? The key is the word Zachar that the Rambam wants us to notice, and that's the mitzvah to tell the story of Mitzrayim. Kimo Shnei Amar, Zachar Eseh Yom HaShabbos. As it says, remember the Shabbos day. I don't understand that. I don't get it. What do you mean, as it says by Shabbos? This has nothing. Pesach has nothing to do with Shabbos. Telling the story of the Exodus from Egypt has nothing to do with Shabbos. So why does the Rambam? This is our second question. You can see in the questions to think about. Why does the Rambam compare the Zechira, the mentioning of what happened in Egypt, to the mentioning of what happened of the mentioning of Shabbos? I don't understand that. I don't get that. The pasuk Zachar Siyom Shabbos Akadsho is the pasuk to make Kiddush. That's the 10 Commandments. Why do we need to be making comparison to the 10 Commandments by Mitzrayim? Those are 2 questions I'd like you to think about. What I would like you to do is take a crack at it. I'd like you to take a crack at it. I'd like you to try to come up with answers to those 2 questions and send them to me today. And I'd like you again to number them. First question, here's my answer as to how many dinim there are. And here's my second answer as to what the connection is between Shabbos and Mitzrayim.